Okay, we will go ahead and get started here. My name is Jamie Staten, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at TRECA. Thank you for joining us for our session tonight, where we're going to be talking about the Family Guide to Google. And this is one of 3 topics that we've had with our virtual open house. We had sent out an email earlier in the year that talked about different topics, and we were talking about checking and understanding progress, the Evolve portal, and different places where you could go to get your questions answered. And for these sessions, we wanted to pick out the topics that we seem to get the most questions about and address them. So we will be kind of walking you through different steps for that. We are recording this so we can send it out to those people that are not able to attend. You will want to keep yourself muted for the session just so we don't get a bunch of feedback, but we will have time for questions and answers throughout the session, so you can unmute yourself then, or you can put questions in the chat box. So I will, at this time, go ahead and turn the session over to Mr. Miller. He is one of our teachers here on our teaching staff.
Thank you, Mrs. Staten. Can everybody hear me okay, it sounds like? All right. So thanks for coming. Thank you. My name is Mr. Miller. I'm a teacher up at the high school. I teach American history and psychology. So don't recognize any of the names. I kind of recognize one. So if your child takes American history or psychology, they might have me at some point. So what we're going to do tonight is a family guide to Google. We're just going to run through a couple different topics. You can see the topics on the screen. I'll mention it a couple times, but each teacher uses Google in a different way. So when we get to the later part of the session, we'll talk a little bit about accessing Google Documents, turning in items from Google Drive to Brightspace. And don't worry if you don't know any of this stuff. When I first started here at TRECA 5.5 years ago, I really didn't know much about Google. So the more that you play around with it with your student and get into the weeds with Google, it keeps cutting in and out when I'm talking. Is that just for Mr. Moreland or is that everybody? Okay. Well, it'll be recorded, hopefully, right? So, okay, good. Sorry, Mr. Moreland. So you can see the topics there on your left. We're going to cover, what is that, 6 or 7 topics. So we'll keep going. Authorizing your Google account will be first. Most, if not all of you and your students will have done this already. I go through this with newer students, so you might want to check with your child, or you can log in and see if their Google account has been authorized. So when you log into Brightspace, on the right-hand side, you'll see a section with Google Apps, and that's on the left-hand side of the slide. And I would say, boy, like 95% of the students that I impersonate or that I can see as a student view have already authorized there. So chances are, if you're watching this or if you're here with us live, your student has done this. But we wanted to go through the steps just in case, because if you don't authorize your Google account, you can't get emails through TRECA. So you can see number 1 is clicking on the blue authorize button. That's actually number 2. And then number 3 will take you through a couple of the steps to sign in with Google. You want to make sure that you're using your Brightspace username, and then it's at students.treca.org, which should be filled in for you. And then we go next. The next is, of course, Brightspace password. That brings you to one of those typical screens where you and I are always clicking accept when we're signing some sort of agreement, whether that's downloading some software or something on your phone. You want to do accept click accept welcome to your new account. And then the last one, of course, you have to give access to Google, which allows it to do all sorts of stuff. But we ask you to click allow. And sometimes you might have to scroll down just a tad to see the allow button. So once you have done that, that's a big part of the battle. You want to make sure, again, that your student is authorizing their Google account. The next thing is accessing Google Mail. And I know that a lot of students or a lot of my friends kind of make fun of me a little bit because I have a Yahoo personal account. So a lot of my parents that I see in class have a Gmail. So you will be familiar with this if you have your own Gmail. Your child might not be if this is their first time using Gmail. So you might have to step in and help out. But we have kind of this guide here. You want to make sure that you go to the Google Apps and you can see unread mail. That's where you can get into your Google Mail or into your child's Google Mail. Obviously, the goal is to have as close to 0 on that number as you can, which means that your student is at least clicking on and reading the emails. So this is a short guide on sending and receiving emails. We have step 1 is just showing you and your students where you send and receive emails in your inbox. The first one you might see is get started with Gmail the first time that you do it. Again, this is stuff that most of us know, but if you're unfamiliar with Google, you can rewatch this part. It's a great first couple steps to get you used to how to use Google and Gmail. So step number 2 there, you can see it. Once you click and open the email, you want to read the body of the email and reply if needed. So you might show your student, especially if they're younger, some of the things that they can do, replying to emails and replying to their teachers. Here's a couple different steps on sending and replying to emails. If you want to write a new email, there's a pencil in the upper left-hand corner for you that you will be able to use to create a new message. There's all sorts of other things that you can do. A double-sided arrow makes the window bigger for those that need like a larger window when they're typing. You want to, when you have your to line and subject line filled out, the great part about being logged in with your Trekka Google account is that when you're writing to somebody, the to line, it'll start to autofill a lot of your teachers. So if you're writing me an email and you start typing in Ross Miller, it should come up with my email address right in there for you. If you're emailing another teacher, start typing their first and last name and it should pop up for you. And then the blue button down at the bottom is the send. We also have highlighted the paperclip, which is if you want to attach something. And then if you don't like your email and you want to get out of it, there's a little trash can in the bottom right for you to delete and start over. So we're changing topics a little bit and we're using folders and contacts for email. Gmail doesn't use the word folder, they use the word labels. So you can see an example from Nancy's classes that she has 4 folders for sorting her emails. I have a bunch of different folders, like I'll have from administration, an administration label, I'll have psychology label, American history label. So I would encourage you and your child to set up some labels in their Gmail. Otherwise, it gets very sloppy and unruly, and it's just a really good tip to keep them organized. Being in an online school, I think it's really important. Creating labels and sorting different emails into different labels, especially 1 per class, would be a really good starting point. And to make a new label, you just, there's a button on the bottom left. It has a plus sign and it says create new label. And then you can make as many labels as you want. I don't really use contacts a ton. I know a lot of people like to use contacts for starting an email. So you can always create a new email in Gmail using the little pencil. And then there's a contacts button under the waffle. If you see it right in the middle there, it's the 9 button little circle. We call it the waffle. And there'll be a contacts button. It looks like, I think this is new enough. It's got a blue background with a kind of a white outline of a person. And then you can make as many contacts as you want. I don't find the need at Trekka, at least, because when I start typing into the TO spot, it generally fills it out for me. But if you have somebody that you might want to know their email off the top of your head, or you have kind of a personal email that you want to add to the contacts, you can make as many contacts as you want. And again, this is going to be recorded, so if you need to go back and reread, or not reread, rewatch or anything like that on using Gmail, then please feel free. Just like anything else, the more that you use it, the easier it gets. And again, I'm fairly certain that most of us that are listening have used Gmail before. So one of the things that we use here at Trekka, and again, it will vary by teacher. I know in my American history class and psychology, we use Google Documents a lot. So this is just a short step-by-step on how to kind of educate yourself on accessing Google Documents. So step 1 is, of course, you want to go to google.com. Up in the top right, there'll be a couple words. Usually it says Gmail images, and then there's a waffle. And then really important, up in the top right, it'll show you how you're signed in to Google. You can see here, it's a picture of one of our teachers. That means that she is signed in under her Trekka account. What happens sometimes with our students is they have a personal Gmail account and a Trekka Gmail account. If they're doing work and submitting work with their personal account, it's we can't access it. So it's important when you look up in the top right, you want to make sure that they're signed in under their Trekka ID. Step 2, you can see, is signing into Google Drive, which is the triangle, and then you select My Drive, which is step 3. Step 4 is choosing a folder or create a folder. So in Gmail, we use labels. In Google Documents, we use folders. Again, I have some stuff in my class, and some other teachers probably have this too, creating folders in your Google Drive for each class, each course that you're in. Science, social studies, math, English, physical education, health, whatever, pop culture, whatever topics, whatever subjects your child is enrolled in. Be a good idea to create some folders for them, at least one for each subject. And then you can see down in step 5, there's a couple examples, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 resource room, just a couple examples of what the folders look like. All right, so we're cruising along here. We are on turning in and submitting an item from your Google Drive to Brightspace. This will apply to some of our classes at Trekka. There's some teachers, including me, that use Google Drive and Google Documents for assignments. So one of the examples that you'll hear your child talk about is a Dropbox assignment. And there's a couple steps that you have to follow. You can see here, it says your student has completed the assignment and stored it within their Google Drive and within the correct class folder. So let's say because I'm biased, that we're working in American history class and your student has completed an assignment on World War II and they're finished with it, what they have to do is share the document with me, because when they first start doing the document, it's private to them. They are the only ones that have access to it. So when they are turning in and submitting an item from Google Drive, they have to share it with their teacher, which in this case would be me. So I have instructions in my class. If you're looking in your child's class and there aren't instructions, you can always contact the teacher, and I'm sure they'd be happy to walk you through the steps. They can be a little bit different per classroom. So once they select share, it'll pop up in the middle here where it says share with people and groups. And the only issue that happens sometimes when it says get link way down at the bottom, Trecca Digital Academy, anyone in this group with this link can view. You want to make sure that it says that. Anyone in this group with this link can view. Because who's in that group? Me. All the teachers are in that group. So basically your child is granting their teacher access to their document. And then they would click copy a link. It goes onto their clipboard. And then we can go to the next slide and you'll see where the student drops it. So they would go back to Brightspace. And here's an example of a Dropbox. This one happens to be called the Lunchroom Fight. And there's two different ways that this will happen. And not to get into too much detail, but you're either going to paste a link with that handwriting there. You see where it says paste link in red. That's where your child will paste their link. Other classes will have a file submission. And what that means is your student would be working in a different program where they save their file, whether that's a PDF or Microsoft Word or Open Office or any kind of program that different teachers use that have a physical file extension. So the teachers hopefully have that set up in their class. So your student is either going to submit a text submission or a file. For our purposes, because we're talking about Google, we're only talking about text submission because they're submitting a long line of text, which is the link to their assignment. So we'll open it up for questions in a couple minutes. We have just one or two topics left to go, believe it or not. I think this is actually our last topic. Using Google Meet for teacher help. I had, I think, 3 Google Meets today with students. One lasted about 20 minutes. One was 45 minutes. One was about a half an hour. So hopefully for those that are in here right now, or if you're listening to the recording, your student has had the opportunity to meet with one or all of their teachers in a Google Meet. There's a couple ways to get to that point. The first is scheduling a Google Meet, and that can be made in different ways. I would suggest checking with all of your teachers to see how they book time. Some might have a link. It might be just, hey, can I meet with you Thursday at 11 in the morning? It just depends on the teacher. Once that's booked, you want to help your child remember that there is a session, and you can do that several different ways. I know just from talking with parents up at the high school level, they have either a written calendar on like a planner. They have Google comes with a Google Calendar, so you can put appointments and things like that on a Google Calendar. There's lots of different ways that you can remind your student that they have an appointment with the teacher. And they'll get a link to the virtual room. So everybody here tonight, right, you had a link to the room. I put an example down there that doesn't work, but it's one example of what the link to the room should look like. Step 3, again, can vary class to class. You can see Mrs. Staten and I have our cameras on. We had our microphones on. Students generally, when they're meeting with me, they tend to have their camera off, but their microphone on. So it totally varies, whatever your child is most comfortable with. One of the cool features that a lot of teachers use is called a Jamboard. It's just an interactive whiteboard that comes up, and students and teachers can work collaboratively. Hey, oh, thank you. They can work collaboratively on the Jamboard. So it's really, really useful. I used it twice today. And it's great to work on test questions together or whatever you want to do with the teacher. And then I always ask the student after like a debrief in step 4, how did it go? Let's schedule another time to meet. Maybe you talk with your child afterwards, see how it went. Did you schedule another meet? Do you want to meet once a week with your teacher? Something like that, something to think about, especially because we're in the beginning of the school year. I do have students that I meet with once a week, and I know it differs from elementary to the middle to the high school. What worked, what didn't work, what can we improve at our next Google Meet? So those are some things to discuss and talk about with your child. So we flew through those topics. If anybody has questions, feel free, unmute, fire away whenever you're ready.